What's going on, guys? It's Ace Coleman here, and today I'm going to show you how to use this thing. This is the Hamskea Waypoint arrow level, and the reason I wanted to make this video is because there's no really good tutorials on how to actually use this thing. Let me first start off by saying the reason you use this, the biggest reason is, personally, I want to be able to move my rest height between two different arrow shafts for indoor nationals this weekend. As you know, we shoot these really big arrows, the 27s, and then for the shoot off, we'll switch to something like this Revelation or this X Impact, something really small. So what I wanted to do was, let's get this rest height figured out so I can swap back and forth. But the last thing it does is it also checks your center shot. So you can basically use it, find your center shot or wherever you have your left and right tuned at, and then just go from there. Personally, I use a dial caliper to get my center shot set up. And with this, the mark is like just a little off. Whether or not this is more accurate or not, it kind of depends. I would have to go and look, but we're talking like a 32nd of an inch off or less. Like a tick mark is still in line, just off. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing I would do is obviously put your bow in a vise, and I'm using the Gen 2 level from Hamskea, and I have the turret level perfectly leveled. I will get it pretty close in the vise using the adjustment here, and then I will use these door shims and basically a hammer and slightly tap them in to get my left and right and my up and down fine-tuned. And if you don't have access to something like that, just make sure that you are very careful with how you move the bow in the vise. So what I mean by that is you want to let go of the bow and then look at the level. You don't want to just like force it. You can kind of get pretty good at it when you force it, but if you just let the bow alone and use shims, it's a lot easier to do. So now we have the rest cord off, and I've already tuned this bow. I know this is shooting a bullet hole through paper. That's where I like it. The bow is level, and we're just going to get this position set. And if you have a blade rest, just let this sit on the blade. So now, basically what I'll do is I will loosen this and move it up and out of the way for the height, and the left and right move it out of the way as well, so there's no interference. Then you will take your arrow and slide that on, just like that, as you can see. And put this back in the bow. And you will tighten this down somewhere on the front. So I have the arrow sitting on the blade. We're just going to loosen the screw and get the turret level, get the left and right settled. And we don't have this adjustment on the riser at all. You also want to make sure you have this butted against the riser enough to where when you do drop this, it actually is in the riser shelf. So let's go ahead and get that level. It's good to know that my up and down from my rest height after I tuned it is pretty much dead level. That's a good sign. Now with a blade, will it be dead level? No. It's going to sag down a lot, and the level will be like this, and that's because of the blade sag at rest. So let's get that right there. Cool thing with this nylon tipped screw is you can have it tight and just slightly move the whole level, and you just have to play with it to get it right. Very cool. That is a little off. Okay, I take that back. I would not keep this tight and move it, I would definitely loosen it every time because it kind of bends weird. I think we're good now. Okay, so perfect left and right. Now, let's just focus on the center shot. Now for the center shot adjustment, you basically just take this little black ruler, make sure this is loose, right there, and you slide it until it butts against the riser. Just like that. And then you tighten it down. And I will make sure I keep this level, or this post rather. I want to make sure that post is not touching the riser. And I want to make sure the bubble left and right is good. Butt that against the riser and just tighten it. And looking at the left and right, it's still centered. That is butted against the riser. It's actually not butted against the riser. I'm going to push that again and just got to hold it there and snug it down and then double check. Yeah, so I did that twice. I don't think you can see it on the camera, but there's still a gap there. So you really have to make sure you hold that position. Okay. So what I found is every time I tighten it, it seems like it backs up off the riser. So what I would recommend, just to check this, is just tap it against the riser and let it be without tightening it down. Now let's see what the adjustment is. Okay, so let's go ahead and check this. I want to take this indicator out just so we can see. So back here, there is a line on the level and then the 13/16 mark. And you basically want to adjust the left and right of your rest. So the left and right. So when this barely touches the riser, this mark is lined up perfectly when it's sitting on the rest. And we want this to just touch. And the level, left and right, needs to be perfect. So according to this, it's, like I said, just a little off probably. If we raise this, we can check it as well. If we lower it, it looks a little off. If we raise it, it's a little to the right. But I like this to sit on the blade as much as possible. Just like that. So according to this, I would probably need to bump it, but what I might do is use the caliper method. I usually take the number for the diameter off of the website for the arrow manufacturer, divided by 2, and then add 13/16 to my caliper, and then get that set up. I have that in a different YouTube video that I'll have linked right here. Essentially, that is up for discussion. It's shooting really good right now, so I'm going to keep it where it's at for the center shot. So as far as the up and down, I want to put this back in here, and this is why I am such a huge fan of this thing. We're going to put this in now and then raise it up slowly until the turret level is perfectly centered, and then hold that position and tighten, and then let go. Now the turret level is perfectly aligned. So as you can see, this is the measurement from the stick, which is right there, and the side of the level. So we have 27/64, pretty much in line with that tick mark on the level. So if I want to shoot, say, a 166 diameter shaft, I just have to go to the top line with my rest adjustment. So I'll basically move my rest up until the same tick mark is in line with 166 if I want to shoot X impacts. We'll go ahead and get that started. Okay, so let's go ahead and take this off. Got our 166 diameter arrow shaft. I'm using biter nocks, so the nock is exactly the same, even though it's a pin. It's the exact same nock fit. So I have a 166 diameter arrow installed, and I got the left and right of the level, and I didn't change any of my adjustments. And as you can see, this is very out of whack. It's like the arrow tip is too far up. So because we have the adjustment on the side, we're going to go ahead and move it in line with the 166. So we're going to go ahead and loosen this knob until we get our mark lined up. So just move it down to about right there. That was where our 166 mark was. It's a little low. This actually needs to come up. We'll just get it level. Just like that. Perfect. It's perfect from my view. Let's take a look at the rest. So we did move it down to 166 and it was a little too much. These arrows might not be a true 166. I'd have to check the website. But what I do know is when I get the level perfectly square by moving it down and having this arrow perfectly straight and the center shot aligned at the same center shot I had earlier, we have just a small gap that we have to move this blade up. So what I'm going to do that's actually going to be helpful for me is I'm going to move this rest up until it barely touches. Before I move the rest, I'm going to take a picture of my rest marks on the other side and then get an after picture with this arrow and then shoot it through paper, get the rest height through paper, and then I'll know how many turns I need to move my micro adjust and the lines in order to get it set between both arrows. So this is my rest height. It looks like it's pretty in line with that tick mark right there. So we're going to go ahead and move this up. That's really good. So some tips on this. I would make sure that when you loosen the rest height, you keep it snug so the body doesn't rock back and forth. I can't really move this body, but it's loose enough for you to use the micro adjust. And I used my Allen wrenches on the micro adjust screw so I can get a better feel for my adjustment. And then I tapped the blade from the bottom up to see any flex, and now it doesn't have any flex, with the turret bubble still in the middle. So essentially, I basically moved my rest up one entire tick mark from my 27s to these X impacts. So that's really easy for me to go back and forth on for my arrow tune. Now let's go ahead and see how these arrows shoot through paper. So let's now install the rest cord. I have a limb clamp set up and I like to go from right to left on this and pull with some pliers. And then I'm going to take my Allen wrench and tighten this down. That should be good. Okay, that is not good. So that's where I usually tighten it for my 27s, and as you can see, there's some slack there. So I'm going to have to pull this a little tighter. That should be very good. I always want to leave a little bit of tag end on this adjustment. That is a very good adjustment. It's extremely hard. That's probably dropping at the halfway point of the arrow, which is really good. Let's go ahead and see how this looks through paper. So this is the tear that I got, and it looks like it's just a little bit of a high tear. So I really need to move that tip up some more. So judging from the decision I made with the level, if I lined up the 166 mark, it would have probably shot a bullet hole. So I'm going to go back to the drawing board and do that. So this is what I found. Basically, I marked the mark that was in line with the 27/64, and it was actually perfect. And I used a silver Sharpie to put a dot next to that line. And I went online and I found that the inside diameter of the X impact is 166, but the outside diameter is 0.228. So we can actually move this ruler in line right between 204 and 246, right right in there. So let me see. It's about halfway. Yes, right there. Okay guys, so I have the bow level, and I kind of have to hold it with my hand to make sure the turret level is perfect. With that adjustment I made in my hands, and it was a guesstimate, when I have the bow perfectly leveled, this is what the turret level is doing. With both of these levels sitting against the riser and the riser shelf. Now let's take a look at where the rest is. There is just a little bit of play there. So we had a low tear earlier. That's because the rest was too low. Now that we have set this correctly to a pretty guesstimated spot for our arrow diameter, once we move this up and touch that, it's going to be good now. So let's go ahead and make that adjustment. Very cool. So what I would recommend doing is adjust the rest to where the little line for the up and down is completely off the riser shelf, and the blade is holding the entire level, and then slowly back it down until it just touches. I'll show you guys what that looks like. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead. From my vantage point, this is not touching. I'm going to lightly move the rest down until it touches. Right there. Okay, perfect. Again, just to show you guys, I moved the rest up until this was completely off of the riser, and then back down until it barely started to touch. And both levels, I just have to tweak it with my hand. Both levels are level. So let's go ahead and now see how it shoots through paper. All right. Let's see that new result. What did that do? And that is the Hamskea arrow level, this arrow right here. So always make sure you don't assume which diameter you're using. Make sure you know the difference between the inside and outside diameter. I made the adjustment. I rose the arrow off of the blade, dropped it back down until it barely touched. Both levels level, bullet hole. And that's a good starting point. And now what I'll do is I'll take a look at my rest height, take a picture of that, and then I'll know the difference between my 27s and my X impacts. So that's it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed that video. It was kind of long-winded. I made a few mistakes, but those are probably the best videos. That way you know what mistakes not to make. So if you want to pick up one of these, just go to hamskeaarchery.com and pick up one. And I would highly recommend to use this if you're going to be shooting different arrow setups on a Hamskea rest. If you don't shoot a Hamskea, it's still beneficial to have, especially if you're wanting to make sure if something moves, you can always have something to go back to. So if you have any other problems with your bow setup, if you have target panic or something that you need fixed with target archery, make sure to head to my website at championarcheracademy.com to find a solution that best fits you. We'll see you in the next one.